Polygons. These are any shape that consists of straight lines that can be drawn on a flat surface. We name polygons based on the number of sides that they have. Putting similar polygons together can create some sort of a pattern, especially if they fit together perfectly. And this is called tessellation. There are really only three shapes that tessellate. These are the triangle, square, and the hexagon. Now, let us define tessellation. According to Lamb, a tessellation or tiling is a way to cover something, usually a flat, two-dimensional surface, by shapes that fit together perfectly so that there are no gaps in between them. Although, it doesn't mean that the shapes have to be regular. There are various examples of tessellations with odd shapes that still tile together perfectly, like the art of Moritz Cornelis Escher, which consisted of various patterns from seemingly irregular shapes. Taking a closer look at this style of lizards, it may seem odd on how these figures go together, but we can see that the underlying shape that makes this possible is a hexagon. Another example of Escher's art with an underlying shape is this style of flying horses. At first glance, it may seem hard to spot the polygon used to make this art, but when we connect the noses of the four adjacent horses, we can see that the square is revealed, making this styling possible. These are only some of the many artworks of Moritz C. Escher. Here's one of Escher's best artworks titled Metamorphosis 2, which showcases the use of changing tilings and patterns as we move through the woodcut. There are also Metamorphosis 1 and 3, which is shorter and longer than this artwork respectively. He's also one of the people that developed some of the rules and methods that we use today in creating these kinds of artworks. And here are the three of them. First is translation. A translation is a shape that is simply translated or slid across the same plane and drawn again in another place. Next is reflection. A reflection is a shape that has been flipped, most commonly flipped directly to the left or right, or flipped to the top or bottom. Reflections can also be done at an angle. And third is rotation. Rotation is spinning the pattern around a point, rotating it. A rotation or turn occurs when an object is moved in a circular fashion around a central point which does not move. We can now move on to the applications of tessellations. A significant example of the use of tessellation can be found in Islamic art and architecture. In particular, the Muslim population of Maghreb, North Africa, the Iberian Peninsula, Sicily, and Malta during the Middle Ages. The idea of colored geometric shapes suits well, since Islam forbids the living object as a representation in art, thereby accepting the abstract features of a tessellation in a spectacular manner. Another great application of tessellations in the modern world can be found where you're currently looking at, and that is computer graphics. Our computer screens, including our phones and tablets, are made up of a bunch of tiny squares that emit either red, green, or blue light to display the things that we need to see digitally. But this is only the first part. As we go into making 3D models such as in video games, we actually use triangles to render these objects with depth rather than only having height and width. With the rapid pace of advancement in computing technology, we are able to make more and more complex objects using our current hardware. But still, we can use tessellation as it is a powerful feature to reduce the number of vertices sent to the graphics card. Therefore, we can have a more efficient way of displaying and rendering these complex models, since there is still a lot of power and memory constraints in mobile hardware as of today. In summary, polygons are shapes that consist of straight lines that can be drawn on a flat surface. Putting similar polygons adjacent to each other will result in a pattern which is called a tessellation. The three polygons that perfectly tessellate are the triangle, square, and hexagon. Tessellations, as properly defined, is a way to cover a flat, two-dimensional plane by shapes that fit together perfectly. It is possible for irregular shapes to tessellate as demonstrated by the artworks of Moritz C. Escher. There are three rules or guidelines in creating a tessellation. First is translation, where shapes are just moved from one place into another in the same plane. Second is reflection. Reflection is when a shape is flipped, either from left to right, top to bottom, or vice versa. And rotation, or turn, occurs when an object is moved in a circular fashion around a central point which does not move. Tessellations can be applied in architecture and design as it has been used by different Muslim populations around the world in their infrastructures. It can also be applied in computer graphics as it is very effective in reducing the number of vertices needed to render a 3D object, therefore making for a more efficient way of displaying these things through our screens. And that is it for tessellations. Before I go, I want to leave a quote from the man who has made numerous artworks using this concept, and it says, "Only those who attempt the absurd will achieve the impossible." A quote by MC Escher. Thank you.